Hey there, true believers. Thanks for joining us again with another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. On this one, we're going to be talking about Dogman and the Devil Monkey and similarities, differences, and the possibility that maybe what we're looking for when we're talking about the Dogman, in at least some instances, is a baboon-like primate that has kind of gone unnoticed. But it's going to be me and Ryan Paul Tremblay, and we're going to discuss all this fun stuff. And if you keep up with Midnight Lycanthropy and Kenny, or Star Fox, as he likes to go by, this is kind of a part two to that. So if you haven't checked that one out, I hope that you go back, and I'll put links in the description later on as soon as he gets that episode up, and you can go back and check that out. So, Mr. Ryan, how are you tonight, dear?
I'm doing very well. I'm recovering from bronchitis, so I still feel it a little bit, but I'm getting my energy back, so I'm getting back into the thrill of things. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to come down with your bronchitis or whatever, so I'm hacking and coughing worse than I usually am. I'm still my lovely self, but
Lovely, is that the word you choose?
Well, you know, you got to kind of make it sound good anyway.
True, yes, true. No, I hope you get better. I hope you feel better really quick, man, because I know that bronchitis beat my butt, dude. I was like down and out. I couldn't do anything. So
yeah, for me, the big thing is, you know, just don't feel like I'm getting enough air or whatever. I just feel like it's kind of burning and everything. So
breathing like Darth Vader over there.
Yes.
Yep.
So I figured we'd do this thing where we took a look at Dogman, because there's a lot of different theories that, you know, surround the idea of Dogman, as far as this upright bipedal canid that, you know, kind of looks like a werewolf. But then there's a lot of theories on these, as you know, some of them are that these things are actually werewolves, which I have a problem with. And then there's the idea that maybe this is some evolved wolf, or it is something that comes from the same lineage as wolves and other canids, but has somehow evolved the ability to stand upright, to climb trees, and has front paws, kind of like, you know, a raccoon or whatever, which is always a possibility. I'm never closing anything out.
Sure.
But I'm kind of applying the idea of Occam's razor to biology here. So it's kind of what is the best fit. So let's look at Dogman. So if we'll just start off with Dogman and we'll work our way around. So Dogman, if I asked you to give me a description that everybody kind of follows of Dogman, what would you say that Dogman should look like according to all the descriptions?
Physically, I'd say, you know, it's a German Shepherd head or a wolf-like head, you know, a very muscular body, which still kind of confuses me, but I'll touch on that in a bit. I'll tell people, you know, that they're upright, and they sometimes assume the quadruped position, you know, and it kind of resembles something you'd see in maybe The Howling, perhaps, you know. I don't really go towards the American Werewolf in London too much, because that thing was a quadruped solely. It didn't, you know, raise up on two legs. So I usually analog it with The Howling. I say, you know, if you've seen The Howling, you see what people are describing as the Dogman.
Yep. So we're looking at, I've got some key things here. I lost my words. Anyway, key things here to look at, describers. So we're looking at a large bipedal canid-like, with a mane is usually mentioned on quite a few of them. Human-like hands, and whenever we say canid head, we're saying it looks canid, or looks like a canine, or looks like a dog. The colors usually range between gray, white, and black. I have had reports of some that are kind of tan colored, and other colors kind of a cinnamon color. The size is usually somewhere between the size of a man to around 10 foot tall, which is kind of excessive. The eyes generally are mentioned to be yellow, golden. I've heard blue, red, and I've even heard green.
Yes, I have
So,
too.
so yeah, they're known for the auditory sound of the popping and the crunching sound of bones,
Yep.
as well as, of course, the howling sounds that we hear off in the forest.
Hmm.
Kills are often reported as very brutal. Often they are decapitations,
Hmm.
especially, and this is talking about with wildlife, with family pets, livestock, things like that. There's no really confirmed kills on human beings that we can say,
Hmm.
because
True.
that would mean that we would have to confirm that the thing actually exists in the first place. The rear tracks, more often than not, look very much like those of a canid,
Hmm.
while the front tracks typically are more like those of a raccoon or almost human-like in
Yes.
appearance.
Yes.
Um, so, with those things being mentioned, what what do you feel like one of the possibilities of the origins of these things might be?
Well,
I
I've
know
gone
we've
down that. I've gone down that rabbit hole, Robert. The whole shape shifting, interdimensional kind of rabbit hole, and I do think there's some credence to it. I really do. I mean, I believe in the skinwalkers, the Yunadalushi, so I can't outright dismiss shape shifting right off the bat. But then
Mhm.
I do have to look at the difference between the shape shifting of a werewolf and a skinwalker, though, because there's a lot of differences there. Like, a skinwalker, we're talking about a man becoming like, something the size of a coyote. Okay. Could
Mhm.
he live through it? Maybe, maybe not. But then when you look at a werewolf, though, we're talking about the average man, okay? Literally transforming into a werewolf. That means that the snout is extending, the teeth are tearing out of the gums, the hands are elongating, the legs are changing shape. How many times could a human actually go through that transformation before their human body said, you know what, enough is enough, and they tap out and that's it, So I don't know how I feel about the whole shapeshifting just yet. But interdimensional, though, okay, now that would explain why we hear certain sounds, because people have explained that they've heard like something like a dumpster falling from the sky, a loud metallic bang.
Right.
They've had weird smell, like something burning, like an energy burn off. Could that be a portal opening up? And this is where the dogmen are coming from. That would explain why we're not finding corpses of these dogmen. So there's a lot to look at, and I don't want to outright dismiss anything just yet.
Right, right. And I don't blame you on that. Oh, another key thing I wanted to throw in there. In a lot of the eyewitness testimonies, there are talks about these things either getting on top of the roofs of houses
Right.
or getting up in trees. Now, I think it was the Palmyra Wolfpack story.
Hmm.
They got up on the wolves, or on the wolves, up on the roof. I swear I need to just cash out and just go back to sleep. Uh, so anyway, they get up on the roof. I think there's a story out of Mississippi where they get up on the roof.
Yep.
And then there have been several accounts where these things have been spotted leaping either into or out of trees.
Sure.
So that's interesting. And that's something I want to keep in mind. Now, if
Hmm.
we're looking at Dogman as being something that has evolved along the same lines as other canids like wolves,
Hmm.
foxes, coyotes, then we're going to have to go back into where we have the megafauna,
Hmm.
and we're going to have to look at the ancestors of dogs, bears, cats, and stuff like that. And
Yep.
they're going to need to follow a lineage or an adaptation that's going to cause them to stand upright
Hmm.
and to form the front paws as more like human hands. The
Right.
only thing that will do both of those is if it becomes an arboreal creature to where
Yeah.
it's climbing in trees, just like monkeys.
Yes.
So what we're kind of doing, unfortunately, and it may be true. It may be true that that's what it is, but I feel like we're trying to force an answer onto a question where there's a perfectly logical answer that's just kind of hanging around out there. And whenever we look at stories out of the Appalachians and out of Mahoney Valley and Inuit stuff,
Hmm.
there is something that falls within the same description as the Dogman for the
Yep.
most part. Now, there are some variances that do pop up, but this is what they call the devil monkey.
Yes.
Okay, so the devil monkey actually used to be pretty popular in cryptozoology before the Dogman kind of popped up.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. It's like it took its place.
It kind of did. I mean,
Yeah,
Dogman was so popular that, anything else just kind of paled in comparison, I guess.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Even Bigfoot is kind of taking a seat,
Yeah, yeah,
in the shotgun
surprisingly.
seat. Yeah, but devil monkeys are typically described as being about 4 to 6 foot tall,
Hmm.
sometimes a little smaller, sometimes a little bigger. Generally looks like a baboon
Hmm.
in overall appearance. Much furrier or hairier,
Yes.
with a short, not short, but shorter, uh, bristly tail.
Hmm.
I've heard it described as being one similar to that of a beaver, but very heavily furred, and then another one was similar to a squirrel, but not quite as fluffy.
Right. Correct.
So yeah, there was a lot of that. I've been pouring through this stuff for about a week. Uh,
Nice.
it's even mentioned in Hammerson Peters has an episode, which I will link in the description too,
Hmm.
that for anybody that wants to check it out, where he talks about the devil monkeys up in uh, uh, Canada, the far north, and around Alaska. Up there, it is referred to Setane
Hmm.
by the Atna people, which uh, Setane means the tailed ones or tailed people. Later on, they came up with the description of it being a devil monkey because at that time, the Atana people had no idea what a monkey was,
Sure.
because those are things that are down in South America.
Hmm.
So there is possibly some tie in. So I'm going to go through the devil monkey and what it kind of looks like. So we talked about its height.
Hmm.
So, if you look at baboons, this description is very similar. So
It's close. Yeah.
there is a mane on a lot of baboons, and the
Hmm.
reason that they have that thick mane and everything has to do with a lot to do with the males whenever they're fighting each other because there's a lot of teeth and a lot of claws, and it protects the neck area, the face, the
Hmm.
head. Um, Baboons have very human-like hands.
Yes, very much so.
And what's really interesting is if you look at the tracks of a baboon whenever they've been walking, you'll see marks from the front that look very human or very raccoon-like almost. And then
Yeah.
their rear tracks look like a dog's tracks, but with that extended heel on it.
Yeah, I could see where it would get confused. I mean, if you've never seen a live baboon and you've never seen their footprints and you found this, around your property, then you're going to think, oh, that's canine. That's a dog-like thing. It's not
Yes.
going to register right away. In fact, I had a case in Arizona here, a few years back where a rancher actually contacted me after hearing me on a show. And at first he was convinced that this was Dogman robbery. He was like, I got this pack of dogmen coming and they're stealing my chickens and they're taking my turkeys and everything like that. So I went to go talk to him. But by the time I got there, he had changed his mind because he was saying that they looked more baboonish. They were climbing up and they were making almost monkey-like noises. And he's like, and from what I heard, Dogman doesn't make monkey-like noises. So what the hell are these things, Ryan? So this is when I suggested devil monkeys to him. And I brought a book with me and he looked into the book and he actually saw a drawing of a devil monkey. And when he pointed it, he saw it, he pointed to it and he's like, that's it. That's what those things are. It looks just like those. So, I can see where somebody would confuse devil monkeys with Dogman or Dogman with devil monkeys. They're so much alike. There's a lot of similarities that people overlook.
That's right. That's right. And, they talk about Dogman moving incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the stories of devil monkeys say the exact same thing. They run incredibly fast or they can leap. And the leap is very similar to what you would think with a kangaroo.
Yeah. I mean, the original tales, so they could clear a whole farm field with one leap. So, I mean, that's pretty extreme, one jump and they clear a farm. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
You guys have some springs in your feet, man.
Yeah, that's either one hell of a jump or one little bitty farm field.
You're right.
So, and then if we look at a lot of the baboon, well, primarily all the baboons, they are very canid-like in the face. As a matter of fact, there is a dog-headed baboon
Yeah.
that exists out there. Um, their their canines are incredibly large. They're much larger than any of the canids.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, they're probably bigger than any existing felids that are out there. Their teeth, their canines are incredibly huge.
Yeah, baboons are no joke. I mean, if you've ever seen any nature shows where they're hunting, they are brutal, man. They show no mercy, man. None.
That is right. I actually watched a deal the other day where they got into it with a group of juvenile chimps, and
Hmm.
it was pretty bad. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty grotesque.
yeah, and the coloration on baboons is very similar, and of course that's going to depend on where they're located at
Sure.
and how they're going to blend in. So you got the grays and you've got the blacks that'll pop up and stuff like that. And white is always a possibility in almost every mammal because you have the possibility of albinism.
Hmm.
But then also, if this group of devil monkeys is up in the north, there's more likely, just like with bears, polar bears, you're going to have white
Hmm.
polar bears up there. There's always a
True.
possibility of these devil monkeys being white, which
Mhm.
falls back into the Nahanni Valley and the stories of the Wahila.
Yes. Yes, it
So,
does.
so the Wahila is often mentioned as being very wolf-like, but it
Mhm.
has been mixed in through the years with being wolf-like, bear-like, and then somewhere along the line, people decided that that was some kind of dog man. And
Mhm.
but I've never seen any stories of the Wahila where it stands up on two legs.
And neither have I. In my research for that, when I spoke to different indigenous members from Canada, I did propose, could this thing be a dogman of some variety? And they were very stern about it, Robert. They said, no, no, this thing, when we're talking about this, we're not talking about a type of dogman. Okay. So let's not confuse dogmen with this because they're two separate entities. So
Right.
they're very, very straightforward and said, yeah, no, they're two different things. So, deviate your path.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Which I have no problem with. Excuse the cough. Um, so the dogmen also, or not just the dogmen, but the devil monkeys also are known for killing and decapitating their
Yes.
victims. So again, if you go to that show with Hammerson Peters, he'll tell you a couple of stories about that. That will
You know
really,
what I should bring up too? I mean, you're bringing up Nahanni Valley. I discussed this with Kenny yesterday, but the Superstition Mountains here in Arizona, the Pima Indians actually called it the Superstition Mountains because people were going in there and they were disappearing, and then they would find these people missing their heads. So the Superstition Mountains are kind of just the Nahanni Valley right in the high desert, So
right,
they have
right.
seen devil monkeys out there. They have seen Bigfoot out there. They've seen things that are similar to the Dogman out there, and they blame these killings mostly on those devil monkey like creatures.
See, now Superstition Mountains just needs me out there and wandering around out there. So
Don't go unprepared. I'm going to tell you, Robert, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's got, majestic cliffs. It's got the foliage. It's got the flowers that bloom during the spring. It's got the running creeks and the lakes. But when you get in there, man, you get this kind of vibe like, should I even be here? Do I really
right.
belong here? There's just something about that place that radiates some kind of weird energy that you kind of go, oh boy, I'm feeling a little sheepish now.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, absolutely. I agree 110%. That goes for anytime you're out in the wild, to be prepared. Try to be
Yes.
as prepared as you possibly
Yes.
can. So when we look at devil monkey reports, there were quite a few that were pretty interesting, and I've got the dates for a lot of them. I think the first one really happened in 1934 in
Hmm.
South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And I think that was 1959, shortly, well, a couple of years after that, about 20 years, almost 20 years later, was the Boyd incident,
Hmm.
where that was in Saltville, Virginia. And then within the same year, two nurses had their vehicle attacked in Saltville, Virginia. Now, the one with the Boyds in Saltville, it ran after them and did leave 3 claw marks on the vehicle. With the nurses, the top of their, I believe, I'm trying to remember the type of car, but anyway, it did get the top. I believe it tore the top off of part of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Then after that, in the 1970s, cattle mutilations in Albany, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
1979 in Georgia. There was no specifics on that. 1994, Roanoke, Virginia. These are all devil monkey incidents. 1996, Mullins on Highway 12 in DeRidder, Louisiana. That is the one that we very famously have the photographs of, the DeRidder roadkill.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, and as far as I know, that has never been proven or disproven.
No, not yet. I mean, people have said that was a chow. It was a type of dog, but I don't know. I don't see a chow when I look at that.
I don't either. We used to raise chows, and that looks nothing like a chow to me.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, the front paw looks much more like a hand than it does a paw.
Mm-hmm.
And just the face itself doesn't look like a chow.
Yeah, when you shave down a dog, though, the front paws, they don't resemble digits. They don't really look like human fingers or raccoon fingers in any way. And whatever that thing was, it had very much human-like digits on the front. Yes. So it's hard to say, oh, that's definitely a dog. I just don't see it. I really don't.
What's the shame is that happened way back in 1996, and I don't think that anybody ever collected any samples, skeletal remains, anything like that, which, this thing was dead on the side of the road in the middle of summer, so I don't know that I'd have put it in the back of my car either. So
I don't think I would have, that's for sure.
1997, we have Duncansville, Ohio. 2001, Dansville, New Hampshire. 2006, there was one in Chicago, Illinois. This one actually made the news. I remember this one.
I remember that one too.
Yeah, this is where the guy came home and this thing was attacking his dog, and he actually had the forethought to take out a camera and snap a picture of it. I have seen the picture in the past. I don't know what has happened to it because you can't find it on the internet anymore.
Isn't that weird?
I've looked. Apparently he scared the crap out of this thing whenever he took the picture, which is kind of funny, and it took off bailing out of the house. But, and then last one that I could find record on was in 2009 in rural Louisiana. So there have been several throughout, recorded incidents. There was an attack and I want to say it was in Alabama that just happened a couple of weeks ago on some dogs. I believe it was on 3 dogs. And I think me and Cody, I can't even think anymore. Kenny talked about this on his show. And I really need to be retired out into a field somewhere. My brain's gone.
Out to pasture for you, brother. Out to
pasture. Robert's too old to play anymore. He has to go sit in the field by himself.
Let him frolic freely. He'll be free range Robert Frabo.
Free range Robert. But anyway, we talked about it on his show, and there were 3 dogs that were attacked. One dog survived it with some claw marks on the back. These dogs were all fairly young. I think they were under 6 months. One dog was eviscerated completely. It was pretty bad. I actually have the pictures. I will not be sharing them with anybody on here. And then the last dog was completely decapitated, and the head was found, I think, 25 feet, 25 yards. I can't remember, away from the body.
Wow.
So yeah, something actually either carried the body or carried the head away from that. A couple of years back up in Missouri, there's a possibility that we had one that happened because there was a series of goats that were killed, decapitated, and flung all around this pond area. The people who this happened to actually got on one of the Facebook pages for their area and were asking people about like mountain lions and things like that in the area, and people started mentioning Bigfoot, Dogman, stuff like that, and then they got kind of laughed at and they took the whole post down.
Hmm.
We've tried to make contact with them. They don't really want to talk about it anymore. I think they were kind of,
That's
humiliated by it.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's really unfortunate. I mean,
Yeah.
this is why we have a hard time getting answers, because people mock witnesses, and it's not really cool.
Yeah. No, it's not cool at all. It's not cool at all. It's a really big stumbling block that we all have to deal with whenever we're trying to get stuff
Yep.
done.
Yep.
I do want to mention, whenever we talk about predation and we talk about the decapitation as far as a way of killing, where Devil Monkey and Dogman come into play. When we start to look at other known predators like mountain lions, jaguars, the different mustelids, bears, dogs, wild dogs, coyotes, they don't kill that way.
No.
Jaguars and other cats have basically two ways that they will kill. And one is either, like jaguar is one of the only ones that will bite at the base of the skull in the back, and then the rest
Over
of
the
them,
spine.
yeah, and then the rest of them tend to bite right into the esophagus and
Mhm.
trachea, and they will kill them that
The
way.
the jugular vein.
Exactly. Mustelids, we're talking about weasels and badgers and stuff like that. Typically, they do bite the spine. They have been known to decapitate, but you were talking about a very, very small animal, except for the biggest one is the wolverine. And bears typically will just walk up and maul the crap out of you. They will. Bears are known to just walk up and start eating you. So,
Yep.
wild
You're
dogs.
still alive when they eat you.
Yeah. Wild
Mhm.
dogs are known for all dogs, all canids, quite honestly, wolves, coyotes, all of them make a horrible mess.
Mhm.
Now, the reason they do this, and this is going to be kind of graphic, but the reason they do this is because one or two will grab a hold of whatever. It
Mhm.
might be a deer or whatever it is, and then the rest will start to pull and feed right then.
Yep.
So they begin eating before the creature that they've attacked is actually down and dead. Um,
Nightmare fuel.
yeah,
Nightmare fuel
it
right there.
is.
Imagine being eaten alive.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, no thank you. I'll pass.
Baboons typically kill by tearing their prey apart, but are known to decapitate.
Mhm. That they
So
are.
primates are one of the ones who are really known for decapitation as
Yeah.
far as their prey animals.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons, and several of the reasons, why we're looking at maybe these devil monkeys in many cases are exactly the same thing as what people are reporting as Dogman.
They could be. They could very well be.
Now, there are other cases of Dogman reports very similar to yours, where
Mhm.
it is primarily a quadrupedal animal that is very hyena like. And so this may be something else that's being seen other than
Yeah, but
the
I
typical
have a
dog.
problem calling it a dogman, though. If it's hyena-like, hyenas are not canines. So
Absolutely.
we can't say that a hyena-like, quote unquote, dogman is a dogman. It's not, because if it's hyena-like and it stems from hyenas in any way, which obviously it does if they're looking that much like them, it's not a dog. So
Exactly.
we're gonna have to come up with a new term for the kind of thing that I witnessed, because it's not a dog man. But what do we call it? Like hyena man, hyena creature? What do we call them? So
Yeah. Well, they get into calling it, you got type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, or whatever. And then one of them is the one that looks like a hyena. And then one does
sure.
actually look like a baboon.
Yep.
But I kind of wonder how to say this without being that guy. Some
Uh-oh.
some eyewitnesses, some people don't make very good eyewitnesses. And
True. True.
if you're in a situation where you're under stress and under duress and you're scared,
Mhm.
and the thing that pops in your head first is that thing looks like a werewolf,
Mhm.
because we're used to the idea of dogs, wolves, coyotes, canids in our area. We're
Mhm.
not used to the idea of something like a baboon.
True. Yes.
So if it looks like a dog, it walks like a dog, it talks like a dog, it's a dog, whether it is or not. Excuse me. Um, so, and I think the one thing that really is missing from the devil monkey really fitting into the Dogman is the ears.
Yeah.
The incredibly pointy ears. But let me say this. If this is something that is native to North America and fits within a specific area in an ecosystem, maybe where wolves are lacking or coyotes are lacking, or it's evolved in this somewhat parallel evolution, there's no reason why their ears couldn't be longer or taller. If there's adaptational need for those ears to be up and to be directional, and then this could very easily happen.
Well, another possible theory too, tufts of fur. It could be the fur that's just swooping upward near the top of their skull and it looks like ears. And would it be directional? No and yes. I mean, if there's a breeze, fur is going to move. It's going to make it look like those, quote unquote ears are moving with the breeze. So maybe it's little tufts of fur that are sticking up too.
That is always a possibility. And that's another thing people talk about, like with the Dogman, they talk about the tassels that are on the ends of the ears. There are only like maybe one or two canids that naturally have something like that is more often found in felids than it is in canids. So, and that kind of brings me up to another point. A lot of people talk about when they have hair samples or whatever, and they send it in, they get back all three of these. They get primate, they get felid, they get canid. If you're a primate and you're feeding on felids and canids, that DNA is going to be all over that hair.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it will be. I mean, when you make a kill, the blood's going to saturate your fur, your hands. It's going to be all over your body. So it's going to taint your own DNA sample.
Right. So to me, it makes more sense to say it's a type of primate that's killing dogs and cats rather than to say it's some kind of dog that's killing cats and primates.
Right.
Because that doesn't make sense. You can't say it's a cat that's killing dogs and primates, because the primate is still the outlier.
Right.
It's still the one odd guy out. So it leans more towards it being some type of primate in my books.
I would agree with that. I think that's actually very plausible.
Yeah. And when we're looking at something that's going to be able to stand up on its hind legs easier, rather than having a felid or a canid evolve to where it can stand up, or to have these extra sockets in the hips and things, that I've heard people talk about. Isn't it more plausible to have a primate, because primates are known to stand up? I mean,
absolutely. If you've ever seen a baboon stand up, you can go to your zoo and see this, but when they stand up, they actually hold their front limbs right in front of their chest like a dog, so if you saw that and you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd assume that's a dog standing on its hind legs because of the way the paws are being carried up front. So if someone's not into biology or zoology and they're not really big on animals, I could see the confusion. It could be a quick confusion too.
Yep, that's true. And then when we talk about them and their ability to quickly go up trees or to get on the roofs of houses, I mean, if you look at somewhere like Delhi, India, where they have a lot of monkeys and everything, they're constantly in the trees, they're constantly on the roofs of the houses and things like that.
They go into the power lines over there.
Yes, they do, and that's a real problem over there as well.
Yes, it results in fatality.
Yes, a little Mortal Kombat going on right there. Another thing I wanted to bring up, which I did mention on Kenny's show, was you hear about the crunching sound or that clicking sound when they stand up. I don't think, a lot of people talk about, that they think it's something that's transforming or crunching or changing in the body when they stand up, when they go from quadruped to biped. I kind of wonder if it's just not a defensive noise that they're making to kind of warn you off.
Like a mouth clicking sort of thing?
Yes, exactly. Like clicking their teeth, or, something in the throat, something like that. Along the lines of, we talked about, like a rattlesnake will rattle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. so to warn you off. So maybe this is something similar to that. And people, go ahead.
It could be. You know what, though? I wish you hadn't mentioned a rattlesnake. It brought back that really traumatic event of when I went to go sit down one night to go smoke a cigarette. And when I sat on the chair, I was very much unaware that there was a rattlesnake right underneath me. And I guess I jarred him from his sleep. So all I heard all of a sudden was just that. I was there for just maybe like not even 2 seconds, Robert. I heard that rattle and I grew rockets in my butt. And I just jumped off that chair, just whoop, and I was out, man. You saw a smoke trail where Ryan ran. It was gone. Just bye-bye.
I don't blame you one bit. If I'd have heard that, I'd have been gone too.
I was out, dude. You weren't going to stop me. Nobody was in my way. I would have plowed through them.
Well, at least it wasn't a spider this time. So anyway, yeah, we talk about, the ability to climb on things, climb up trees very quickly. We know that monkeys, apes are good at climbing up trees very quickly.
Canines aren't very good at climbing trees, though.
Do what?
Canines aren't very good at climbing trees.
No,
you don't see wolves or coyotes really jumping up into them unless it's like a fallen tree where they can just walk across. They don't really jump up into them to climb them because they don't have the ability to grasp like a feline does.
Right.
If you look at a cat can actually extend its claws and hold on to the sides of the tree and wiggle itself up. Canines don't have that ability.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And monkeys can move even faster than cats can in trees. So
they can just jump right up.
Exactly. So being presented with all of that, what is your takeaway? What is your thought on the idea that maybe the devil monkey could be an answer for the Dogman?
I think it's definitely a plausible theory. I do think that some people are aware of what they're seeing and they describe it with accuracy. So some of these witnesses that see Dogmen are definitely seeing a canine-like creature. But I think for those who aren't really accustomed to seeing cryptids or acclimated to being outdoors, I do think that they could mistake a devil monkey for a Dogman. Their brain doesn't register what they're looking at. They're already scared. They're seeing something that they're not used to. So their brain's trying to absorb the details and they just kind of add to it. And then they talk to somebody else and that person suggests something. It's one of those cases, power of suggestion, and I think a lot of these cases, it's power of suggestion ruling over what they really saw. I think they saw devil monkeys, but they were suggested it was Dogman. So we get the Dogman report.
I kind of wonder though, sometimes if these, I'm not saying that the eyewitnesses are stupid, foolish, or anything like that. I know you're not either. But I kind of wonder on their behalf if maybe some of these, if not all of these devil monkeys, if they exist, don't look much more canid than we're kind of giving them credit for. What if they're much more canid looking in the face and, a lot of people talk about when they see these things on four legs, they're loping along. Well, I've got Norwegian elk hounds, and when they run, they pretty much lope whenever they're going somewhere. Wolves do that, coyotes do that, but so do monkeys when they're running on all four. It's just an easier way to move. If you got the power in your legs and in your arms, it burns less energy when you're kind of hopping along like that.
True.
So there's not much difference in the locomotion going on right there. And if you look at one of these baboon type things, it's not much of an alteration to make it at a distance, at very least, look like a wolf or some type of canid along.
Well, I mean, that rancher that had the witness, the eyewitness I had here in Arizona, he was a rancher, okay, and he was an older guy. He was about maybe, I want to say 73, 74 at the time, and he's lived here his whole life, and he was one of those guys that lived off the grid more or less. And so he knew the difference between coyotes, dogs, and what he was seeing, whatever was coming to get his livestock. He at first thought, could be a Dogman. I've heard of Dogman. It could be that. But like I said, after I showed him that picture, he was like, yeah, he's like, whatever these are, they don't belong here. Okay. Because it's not a coyote. It's not a wolf. It's not a bear. I've hunted. I'm a rancher. I know my animals, but he didn't know what these things could be. Okay. So for someone to mistake a devil monkey for a canine like he did, that means there was something that kind of clicked as canine in the back of his head. He said it was the way they moved, because it looked like they were running on all fours like a dog would do. But then
Right.
he realized, oh wait, it was knuckle walking too.
Yeah.
So, you know, I could see someone who's not familiar with animals going, oh, that's a dog. That's a dog-like thing. So it's a possibility.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, nobody's thinking, well, I'm going to be seeing monkeys running around out in the field or
Sure.
out in the woods here in North America.
Mhm.
If I'm seeing something running and it's that size, it's a coyote, it's a wolf, it's a dog of some kind, especially if it's got the ears that
Yeah,
are going
and
to
the
match.
noises too. According
Yeah,
to this witness, he did hear vocalizations from these things, and he said it was almost like a barking sort of thing. It wasn't a dog bark, but it was similar to a dog bark. And I was like, well, baboons are known to make noises like that. And I played audio, and he's like, it's very close to that, but it's different in the sense that it was deeper and much louder.
right, right. And that's another thing I was going to mention was that baboons definitely have a bark.
Yep.
There's several different monkeys that actually make a barking sound as a
Yeah.
defensive or a communication sound. So I kind of have the feeling that this really fits in. What really got me going is I was looking at the tracks that were recovered as far as casts and photograph tracks from supposed Dogman encounters.
Hmm.
And I thought, I want to find something that matches up with these rear tracks because they look very canid, but not quite, because there's that extended heel that often
Sure.
is shown down there. So I started going through everything, and I thought, well, let's just play with, let's look at baboons and eliminate that. And I went over to baboons, and I was like, I can eliminate that. That is exactly what they look like, just on a different
Hmm.
scale.
Yes.
So we would be looking at a baboon, or in the family of the baboons, that is probably at least three times the size of the biggest baboon we know of.
Hmm.
So this is pretty big. You're talking about something that could be essentially 6 foot, if it stood up, or maybe even taller on its back legs, where
Well,
we're looking at like Dinopithecus.
it could be an evolutionary thing too, though, because with animals, the more that the prey grows, then they grow. True, they grow to match the size of their intended prey. Just like if prey grows smaller, the animal also grows smaller. The predator grows smaller. It's to equal out with evolution. So could it be an evolutionary thing where animals were much larger here, so the devil monkeys had to grow larger to accommodate their hunts and their ability to kill their prey?
That's true. And if you look at Bergman's law, where animals that are near the equator, at a certain size, as they would move towards the pole, they would get larger, because it
Yeah.
has to do with the retention of heat in the body. A larger body holds in heat much easier than a
Right.
smaller body does. So, and then of course they become more carnivorous the farther they go north, because you have
Mhm.
less opportunity to be omnivorous, which
Yeah.
is another thing that I wanted to bring up too, because most canids are not actually what we would call obligate carnivores.
True.
We think they are.
Mhm.
Felids are obligate carnivores.
Yes, absolutely.
Canids are actually more omnivorous. If you look at wolves, coyotes, foxes, the ones we know in North America, they will actually eat a lot of berries, fruits, and things like that to
Yeah, and
supplement.
the maned wolf actually needs a certain kind of fruit. I forgot what the name of the fruit is, but the maned wolf, if it doesn't ingest this fruit, can actually die because this fruit helps produce the bacteria in their intestines so they don't get ill. So, I mean, there you go. There's a canine, which the maned wolf is,
Mhm.
that has to eat this sort of fruit. It absolutely 100% has to. If you deprive it of that fruit, the maned wolf is going to die.
Right, right. And so that is something that is definitely plausible and shared with the
Mhm.
idea of a baboon or a monkey, something like
Yeah.
that, where they are going to be more omnivorous. And
Mhm.
typically, animals that are omnivorous are more successful than the ones that specialize anyway. A generalized
Yeah.
animal is always is more successful.
Yeah. And
So that's
out here in Arizona, if you go up to the mountains, we have berries that grow. And we
mm,
also have, saguaro cactus. We have prickly pear cactus and prickly pears. They're very nutritious for people. Humans eat them. If you're out in the desert and you don't have any water, you can cut off the prickly pear and take off its skin, remove the little needles from it. If you eat that, it not only gives you food, it hydrates you too. It's got water in it.
yeah,
It's got a lot of water. So for something like a devil monkey or a baboon that's out in the wild, something like that would be just invaluable.
Oh yeah, I've eaten the fruit off the end of prickly pears before, and it's really good stuff, by the
It's
way.
delicious. Yeah. They make
Uh,
candy out of it.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I want you to play devil's advocate for a minute here. So I've thrown all of this out here and asked you about the plausibility. Now I want you to give me the cons that you can think of as to this.
Okay, well, I'm going to start right off with the more spiritual aspect of the Dogman thing. We've had
Okay.
people say they've taken shots at them. They've used large caliber guns and they've hit them, but somehow the bullets just go right on through to them. Okay. Now, that right there, that's not the response of a living animal's body.
Right.
So, any animal, doesn't matter how big it is, if you got a huge rifle and you shoot it, it's going to feel it. You're going to see the wound, you're going to see the blood spill. So that kind of makes it lean towards a whole more spiritual thing. Okay.
Yes. Which would be neither canid nor primate.
Right. So in the Cherokee, they speak of the Ulanga Doglala, okay, which is a very wolf-like entity that's said to walk on all fours, but it can stand up on two legs, right? But it's a spirit, it's an entity. It can turn into a human-like zombie. So maybe people are seeing devil monkeys, but then there are people that are seeing something that's more in the spiritual aspect along the lines of the Ulanga Doglala, okay? Another con is people will see them snarling like dogs, okay? They'll see the face clear. They know what a dog looks like. They see the dog man's face and they're like, oh, yep, it looked like this. People aren't dumb. People aren't stupid. They might get scared. They might panic a little, but in some cases, they're going to know what they're looking at. When you have those smart people, they're like, no, it looked like a dog. It didn't look like a primate. It looked like a dog. You have to listen to them and go, okay, so it was a dog man that you saw. So there are a couple of cons here, but there's not too many that I can think of.
No, I definitely want to know any cons that are coming up, because I think there's going to be plenty of people who are going to disagree with what I've said, and that's absolutely fine. I want everybody to have their own free thoughts in there, because those cons need to be brought up. That's
Yes.
the way science actually works, is where you present something, you state your case, and then everybody comes in and is able to say, okay, well, what about this?
Yeah.
And that's absolutely what we need to do, because me saying I think it's devil monkeys is not the end all. That's not going to be it's not going to end until we've brought in several of them for scientific evaluation. Which
you're following the process of elimination, and that's what we have to do, is we have to eliminate, the impossibilities and start looking at the possibilities and then narrow it down. Maybe someday we'll look out and we'll get a dogman corpse. Maybe someday we'll look out and we'll have a devil monkey corpse. Or, maybe you'll look out, Robert, and a whole group of devil monkeys will walk into your yard. You could be like, hey, I hope if that happens, you call me up and take some pictures for me. But, this is what we have to do. I hope
I've got beer on hand if they do.
But this is what we have to do, though. This is what cryptozoology does. We have to look at the possibilities, go down those venues and really closely examine them and inspect them, because, we might be looking at the wrong thing. And it's happened in the past. I mean, scientists long ago once thought the idea of a duck-billed platypus was absolutely ludicrous. There's no way that there's a fur-bearing mammal that has, poisonous claws and has a duck bill and lays eggs, and then lo and behold, there's a duck-billed platypus.
Exactly. So there's nothing wrong with going down a rabbit hole. Just try to use critical thinking when you're doing that, and don't sell yourself on the whole rabbit hole. Be willing to crawl back out of it and go down another one.
Tie a rope around your waist, though, so you don't get caught down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. You mentioned something that you wanted to talk about with the bodybuilding look and everything, but I wanted to throw something in there real quick where people talk about, being powerfully built in the chest.
Sure.
If I was to bet on something and you said, okay, well, it looked like somebody who's been to the gym and really worked out, primates are more likely to look that way, to have the pecs and everything, than a dog or a canid or a cat is going to do. So, but anyway, make your point.
So there's a picture out there, though, of a monkey that had no hair on him, no hair on his body. You could see his musculature, and damn, that thing was chiseled, man. I looked at that picture and I was like, I am never messing with a monkey, period, ever. Imagine what gorillas or baboons would be like. They'd be like, whoa. So, but no, my problem comes in, Robert, with the newer descriptions, the newer sightings of Dogman, where we get the Arnold Schwarzenegger like build, where they're immense and they can't even scratch their own heads because their biceps and everything are too big. But I'm a huge fan of Miss Linda Godfrey, the late Linda Godfrey. May she rest in peace.
Yes.
If you read her books, all the Dogman encounters in those earlier encounters from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were much more slender, much more thin in their build. They're almost like me, where like they have tone, but they're not like. So I'm just kind of wondering where the new, Arnold Schwarzenegger Dogman came into play. It kind of bothers me a little bit because I have to wonder if we're embellishing, if people are just trying to hype up the Dogman they saw to make it seem more fearsome and kind of make themselves seem more brave, or what's going on there.
Yeah, well, not to get on a soapbox, because we both talked about we weren't going to get on a soapbox.
Sure.
You can't mention Dogman without being able to point out that there has been a problem within the Dogman groups, and I'm talking about like Facebook groups and stuff like that, as far as discussing it, where you have these people who really are obsessed with werewolf lore. I don't know, what do they call it, furries or whatever. But there it doesn't have to go there. And I understand, people, I love werewolves. I love werewolf movies, I'm crazy about them. But to try and apply that to something because you want werewolves to be real, I don't know. That's just bad, biased science. I mean, that's.
So you think you think that's a case of them romanticizing the thought of werewolves and
completely over romanticizing? There's been several. There's several podcasts out there that focus on Dogman. I can think of one, matter of fact, that I've had, and you and I talked about that individual earlier, where he really over romanticized. You could tell by the way he was telling this story about this female Dogman, where he really over romanticized and called it by name every single time that he mentioned it. Wow. So, I mean, it's out there. The problem's out there, and it's something that we have to be able to, take with a grain of salt sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's something that people have to be careful of. I think we just tie on too many human emotions, and we kind of take Dogman and kind of treat him like, our pet dog. And, we got to stop thinking in those lines and just, really look at the mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to throw in there, whenever you mentioned Linda Godfrey and Beast of Bray Road, I think it was Small Town Monsters had an episode talking about that. There was a lady, I want to say she's in her 60s now, or was at the time of filming that, and she talked about her boyfriend, her girlfriend, and her girlfriend's boyfriend all went down this road to the end of the road where I think it was where a bridge used to be. And that's where they used to hang out at. Sure. And, they always had their cars turned around the other way. So if a cop showed up, well, they were just leaving and all this other stuff. And they were sitting out there talking. And she noticed this thing in the wood line that had red eyes. But it wasn't like really big or anything like that. And she noticed it hopping up towards her.
Interesting.
And it got pretty close. So, I mean, this kind of fit in with the whole devil monkey thing. And she said they got into their car and took off, and this thing chased them for a little bit, but it wasn't this werewolf thing on two legs that was running 100 miles an hour, looking in the window at them, or, the whole, almost like the Mothman stories go, where the Mothman's flying along right beside you, looking in the window. So yeah, which I'm not going to say anything about that, but anyway, so it wasn't beyond reasonable. The only thing that was odd that she talked about was, here's this thing, looks like a wolf kind of, or like a dog, but it's hopped up there like a kangaroo.
Interesting.
And, it just kind of scared the crap out of them, and they took off. So that kind of fits in with the Dogman, the devil monkey, all that. And that was in the Elkhorn area. So, I just want it to be out there to be a possibility that people can think about, that maybe these things aren't necessarily canids. I even know of one investigator who swears up and down he thinks they're cats, they're felids.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
No, hold on. You don't get to just mention it and then pass it up. Hold on, Robert. I want to hear some of his reasonings for that, though. I mean,
Has to do
From
with some of
the reports, where does he get anything feline?
okay. Some of the reports have what they call a chuffing sound. And
Okay.
according to him, canids don't make that chuffing sound, that only felids will make that type of chuffing sound. And he even related it specifically to tigers.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. But I mean, the eyes, though, when people describe Dogman's eyes, they describe very dog-like eyes. Felines have the slit eyes, the slit pupils.
Exactly.
So if they were feline, those slit pupils would be present. They'd be in every single encounter that we've got. I've never heard of a Dogman encounter that had the slit eyes.
No, not once. Not once have I ever heard. I've heard a lot of stories where they talk about either how horrifying their eyes were with that red, that amber, or how beautiful the eyes were with that blue and that green.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to almost be mesmerized by the colors.
Well, then the growling too, because people have heard dogmen growling at them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a difference between a canid growl and a feline growl.
Exactly.
When felines are, getting mad, you hear that. You don't hear that. So that's a very weird theory.
Right. Yeah, I thought so too. And another reason that primates could be applicable is whenever you hear people talk about, well, the Dogman. I saw it, it saw me, and it gave me this evil grin.
Mm-hmm.
Primates are known for one of their defensive postures is to show their
Smile.
teeth, and it looks like a smile. The one thing you don't want to do is smile back at them.
No.
You're showing your teeth. You're saying, "Bring it, buddy," and So
I've actually got a story for people to never smile at a primate. So a friend of mine went to a zoo, and he was looking at the gorilla, the silverback gorilla. And he made eye contact with it. So I told him, don't maintain eye contact because he'll take it as a challenge. So if he looks at you, just give a brief glimpse and cast your eyes away. He didn't listen. So he thought there was something cute going on and he smiled, right? Silverback smiled back. I told him, don't keep smiling. Don't keep smiling. You're going to regret it. He kept smiling. And Robert, the silverback, launched itself and its shoulder hit that glass and it actually cracked the glass. Yes. I laughed. I was laughing my butt off because that was a stupid move on my friend's part. And I was like, see, I told you, don't smile at him because you just challenge him. And now King Kong over here is going, okay, bub, you want to play? Let me get through the glass first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I've seen, I don't know how many times at how many zoos where you'll have that big, huge pane of glass, and people will be up there, taunting the gorilla. That's kind of like people who are behind a keyboard have, they're just not afraid to say anything. But if you met them in person, all right,
excellent analogy.
The keyboard warrior.
Yep.
Yes. So anything that you would want to add or subtract from the idea of the devil monkey, the Dogman?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here, and I do agree with a good portion of it. And I think, we do have to keep the spiritual aspect in mind as far as the Dogman goes. But, maybe the spiritual aspect also applies to these devil monkeys. I mean, just because we haven't gotten any reports of bullets phasing through them or whatever doesn't mean it hasn't happened. And if we do get reports, wouldn't that kind of add to this whole devil monkey Dogman theory?
Yes. And there's always the possibility that there are many things going on simultaneously. Sure. It could be that certain people are seeing what we're calling devil monkeys. Other people are seeing something that's much more spiritual. And there's always the possibility of something that is very werewolf-like that is running around out there. I like Wes Germer always says about Sasquatch, I don't have one in my garage for me to look at, and
right.
I don't.
I do have something to add. The whole werewolf theory. Okay, so werewolves, right? What if the reason why bullets aren't hurting them is because they're not a flesh and blood kind of thing? Maybe there's some kind of like astral projection going on there. Something to do with the occult where this thing is manifesting like a werewolf, because I do believe that manifestation occurs. If you spend enough time with indigenous people, you're going to learn to realize that, manifestation is a true thing. Be careful what you say, what you wish for, because you might bring it to reality. Maybe these werewolves are manifesting because people are obsessed with werewolves, okay? There's a huge fandom for werewolves. There's people that are in love, quite literally, with werewolves and write really nasty smut about werewolves. So maybe werewolves are showing up as these projections, these manifestations, and that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing there. But again, that still separates it from the devil monkeys and the Dogman. And I think the Dogman and devil monkeys have a lot in common, Robert.
Yeah, that's true. And, there is always the possibility of something very Tulpa-like going on with, these thoughts where people are wanting something to be so very much that, they'll pop up. Another thing I want to mention is, and it had skipped my mind, was graveyards. A lot of people talk about that they think there's a tie between Dogman and Native American graveyards, and not only Native American graveyards, but also more modern day graveyards.
Sure.
That these things have shown up. So there's always a possibility where you're looking at the spiritual side where the Dogman might occur within that. And that's something that we don't necessarily understand, is more of the spiritual being. And then it kind of falls into, with the more Anglo, there was a practice that used to happen where, and it was a horrible practice, where they would kill or bury a dog alive in a cemetery, and that the spirit of that dog would protect that cemetery. Why that dog's spirit would protect that cemetery after being buried alive, I have no idea. It's just horrible practice. Yeah. But, we have to remember that there's the story of Black Shook. There's all kinds of different things that kind of tie in with graveyards and with these canid-like things. So there's no clear answer right here, what we're talking about with the devil monkey, but there is something that seems to be related in there. And I just want people to take it as this is something to think about. Don't automatically rule out the idea of a primate.
So the cemetery thing, though, I think, really that dates back. I forgot which tribe it was that had this belief, but there was actually a story they told, an oral tradition, where some men actually were turned into dogman-like creatures after Bigfoot was starting to go rogue with their tribe. The Bigfoot were coming down. They were killing children. They were killing their livestock. And so the shaman gathered up a select group of men. And through some practices, they turned these men, the dogman-like creatures, and these dogmen warred with the Bigfoot. Okay, so both sides suffered casualties, but the Bigfoot were driven away, and those dogmen-like creatures actually stayed around, and they guarded the sacred areas of that tribe. So somebody could go back to that.
Yeah, if you get a chance, see if you can't find out some details about that. Like I've talked about before, I'd like it if you and I would get together and kind of do a show on other skinwalker type stuff.
Okay.
It's not going to be skinwalkers, but it's other tribes where they have the shape.
Well, this was similar to a skinwalker, but what really got me on this one was how the skinwalkers in question were actually treated like heroes. They were revered. They weren't, thought of as evil entities. They were the good guys in this whole thing. Right. The shaman, I think there was numerous shaman that actually gathered, and they all did the special incantations, the chants, and the ceremonies. And yeah, these men were transformed into dogmen-like creatures that fought against Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So that's a very rare case, because whenever you hear about the Yinatadushi or something similar, there's never a positive note that follows it. They're always like, yeah, screw those things, but in this case, they're held very up high.
Yep. There's a similar story, I think, that was told on one of Small Town Monsters, where they were talking about the Rougarou, where they were talking about a Native American group who had done something very similar. It had nothing to do with Bigfoot. I think it was another tribe was trying to wipe them out, and they had done something where they turned to a very dark spirit and were able to shapeshift. But anyway, I can't think of anything else. Can you think of anything else tonight?
No, I think we're good. I think we really covered all the bases today, man.
All right, fantastic. I think we did pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this puppy up if you'll hold on just a minute. All right, everybody. Thanks a whole bunch for joining in on another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. And remember, as always, lock your door, lock your windows, check in the closet, check under the bed, because monsters are real and you never know when they're going to be back. Everybody have a great night, and I'll see you next time.
Whispers in the twilight, darkness and a breeze, shadows move in silence, mystery in the trees.